on this week's Most Craved.
Winter is coming, and we're talking Game of Thrones Season 5.
Say goodbye to Game of Thrones. Say goodbye to Game of Thrones. Say goodbye to Game of Thrones.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's Most Craved. I'm Jenna Busch with Legion of Leia.
I'm Silas Lesnick with ComingSoon.net.
And I'm William Bibbiani with CraveOnline. Hey everybody, spoiler alert.
Oh yeah, we are totally talking about everything that happened in all of Season 5 of Game of Thrones. So if you have not watched it or the finale yet,
You're not welcome here.
Yeah, you might want to tune out.
Well, it's. I feel like everyone knows though whether or not they've seen the show. This has been one of the most controversial seasons of a very controversial show. Every time an episode ended, it feels like there were a million think pieces about, is this show getting worse? Is it getting better? Is it sexist? Is it meaningful anymore? Is it just doing all this stuff for shock value? Is it ruining the books? I just feel like everyone can't shut up about it, but it's all negative a lot this season.
This season, yeah. And all right, I'll preface this by saying I read all the books. I started reading them when they first came out 5,000 years ago. And
you look great, Fred, by the way, for your age.
Yeah. Thank you. And I have loved seasons 1 through 4. Absolutely loved. I definitely had an issue with 2 specific scenes, which don't matter right now. But other than that, I've loved it. I've loved the things that have stayed true to the book. I've also loved the changes. So I have no issue with changes from the book. I have no issue with any of that. This season, I did not like. First of all, I do feel like it was incredibly slow for the first 7 episodes.
It really was. I'm not even going to argue on that. It was. Game of Thrones often has a slow burn, and then you realize all of a sudden, oh crap, everything has come to a head all of a sudden.
Yeah.
The first half of this season I was really, really dry.
It was boring, honestly. And for me to say that about Game of Thrones, I can't believe I just said that sentence. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've actually been doing a rewatch and looking at everything that happened in one episode of season 1. I mean, it's unbelievable. I was taking notes on episode 6 that Jane Espenson wrote for a specific project, and I had 5 pages of notes on what happened, and I thought maybe I should rewatch some of the first episodes of season 5. Nothing happened.
There is something, and I'm a very passive fan. I can't remember any of the characters' names, but I've seen every episode,
I
enjoy it. I don't get that emotionally involved. And part of the thing that I think hurts it for me is the pacing of Tyrion, for instance.
Right.
He began this season on his way to Daenerys, and the trouble with the show is that could take an episode or that could take 4 years, and there's no way of knowing. So I prefer, I watch it when it's live, and I'll probably go back between now and the time the 6th season comes out and rewatch not just the 5th season but the whole show, and probably enjoy it a lot more in that.
Yeah, knowing where you're going to actually see him again. Because
of the scope of the show, because of the number of characters, because of the number of ongoing subplots, it really does work very well binged. And it is, I think there's even been some complaints that when they say previously on Game of Thrones, if they show a scene from season 1, you're like, oh, okay, well now I know what happens in this episode.
Exactly.
Thanks a fucking lot, Game of Thrones. Beep that. No, and I don't know, I've only seen the show, but I love the show. I get very involved in the show. I'm not as passive as Silas. And I have been watching this season with some fascination. You know, I feel like some people say, like, oh, if you love something, who are you to criticize it?
I got a lot of that on Facebook.
I love my family. I'll criticize the hell out of them. They drive me nuts. It's fine. I love the show. I even really liked this season, even though it was really kind of blank in the middle, and I was just waiting for them to set the pieces in order so that we can come together for a great endgame. And then we started with that amazing battle with all the White Walkers.
Absolutely.
And then, honestly, I thought it just kept going with one crazy, unbelievable, sometimes, usually in a good way, moment after another. And for me, it was this, I feel like Game of Thrones hasn't lied to us. I feel like a lot of the things that people didn't like about this season are more of a matter of consistency. I've heard a lot of complaints of like, oh, well, we didn't need to see how horribly brutalized Sansa was because we knew that guy was evil. We didn't need to see it again. Yeah, but it's consistent. You want him to act out of character? Why would we not see that when we see every other piece of brutality on this series?
Well, no, I agree with that. I think the problem with this particular season was that it was unending misery. Now, Game of Thrones, so much misery, all the misery. But I think what was missing this season is we had very little Tyrion, so there was a lot of humor missing. There weren't very many bright moments. And the thing is, part of the thing about doing things that are shocking and terrible and awful is that you need some sort of balance. I mean, it's the Game of Thrones balance. It's not like they're going to bring in happy little puppies, but there needs to be some sort of a little more Varys and Tyrion, a little more, because that was the moment in the finale where I was like, oh, I'm interested in the show again, because there's some sort of banter, there's some sort of brightness, not happiness, but brightness. And I feel like the whole Sansa thing was sorrow porn. I also think that we spent a lot of time telling everybody how terrible certain characters were that we already knew, when we could have been spending time with Brienne or Tyrion or all of that. So like, I felt this way about the Walk of Shame. I felt this way about the whole Ramsay story. Like, he's a bad guy. Okay, like, we get it. Like, you don't have to keep showing us. And
But it's a serialized medium. You do have to keep showing us him and who he is in a consistent way.
But I think they balanced it differently with, say, something like Joffrey. Joffrey, no redeeming qualities. Absolutely zero. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't, it didn't feel like they were lingering on him as long as they have with, say, Ramsay. I also felt the same thing about, like I said, the Walk of Shame, where it was a very important scene in the book. Absolutely. I have no problem with that part of the story at all. I have no problem with the nudity, or nudity in general. I know what show I'm watching. More penises. Sorry. But
more penises?
Yeah. But I do think that we spent so much time on it. My issue is not a feminist thing here. My issue is, show me more Tyrion. Show me more other things that are happening.
I have to say, though, I read your piece, and I was curious because I watched the episode and I wasn't really sure how I felt, and then my roommate was watching. I was watching it again, sort of like having read what you wrote, and I have to say I kind of like it just for her performance.
Well, she's fantastic.
Because I think if the scene was shorter, I really like that it begins and she's kind of like, this is just something I have to do, and I'm going to get it over with, and like you see her lose her pride and actually become ashamed, and I get that it was really long, especially when like I'd like to see more dragons and stuff like that, but like. I thought that was well done.
I agree, and actually, and here's the reason why. Yeah, it was really long. I'll grant you that. And as an individual episode, it does play that way. But Game of Thrones is telling one story over a variety of episodes. And I think once you do watch it all, if you watch it all together, if you consume it as a TV series the way one might consume a book, it's going to feel more justified. It's almost like the ending of Return of the King, which goes on and on and on. But that's only if you watch just Return of the King. If you watch the entire series in a day, that feels very justified because the pacing is laid out. And I feel the same way with the misery of this season is they're trying to build something as an overall arc of the entire series, and then it can get mired and people can get bored with it.
I totally agree with that. I think, though, like the finale felt like it should have been a third episode of the season. Like if things had been happening, if more had been happening, if I were invested in some way, if we put a lighting crew in, because everything's so dark. But I think that I probably would have been okay with that scene if everything else hadn't been so slow. I would have been okay with it. I do think Lena Headey was amazing. I have no issue with her body double. She's preggers, guys. Leave her alone. Because there's all this crap online about it. Like, leave the woman alone.
She's never been too objecting. She's never really objected to doing nudity in a movie. She's fine with it. I'm sure she was game.
Preggers.
It's a thing.
There's an interesting reaction, and I found this happen with the sixth season of Buffy, where when a TV show makes you feel bad, you don't like it as much.
Yeah.
And like
that is true.
It's one of those things where like, and I totally understand that. Like nobody wants a show that's just reminding them that the world's horrible and like, and yet like, I don't know, I thought the little lizard face girl, what is her name?
Shireen, the death of Shireen was brutal.
I liked it.
I was fine with it.
It totally worked. Oh, so sad.
It made sense, and I'm glad it backfired. I'm glad that went absolutely horribly.
And we should mention that because there are theories that Jon's not dead and that Stannis is not dead.
Yeah, well, I mean, Melisandre is at the Night's Watch. She could potentially do some of her wonderful fire mojo that we've seen happen to other characters. Right. There's a lot going there. I'm fine with all of the big cliffhanger endings of the season. I think they're all very interesting and compelling. But I just want to say, I do think that one of the issues we run into with Game of Thrones is that there's a lot of people who, because they watch a show, they feel like they understand the show, and they feel like they know what's best for the show. Sometimes they do, and sometimes that sense of ownership over something that you love, especially in a serialized format, makes you really reject whatever it is actually planned for it. And I think that led to problems with shows like Lost. I think it's leading to problems with shows like Game of Thrones, where it's like, this isn't what I wanted to see. It's too much negativity. Well, that's what it is.
Well,
that's the show they made.
No, I'm
You can
fine
stop
with,
watching at any time.
You know nothing, William Bibbiani.
Oh, that was so
Also
good.
true.
Hey, I'm
Yeah.
wearing my Jon Snow shirt in tribute.
There you go. I'm wearing my houses of every. No. There you go. Most Craved, everybody. What did you think of Game of Thrones? Tell us all about your many opinions. Yell at us. That's what the internet is for. Twitter is right here.
Well, good,
and we'll see you next week.